We're here for episode 6 of Knowledge for the Soul, and we have the man, David Alexander, here with us as another spectacular guest. How's it going, David? Glad to have you.
Kevin, thank you, man. Appreciate you having me on your medium. Glad to see that you're giving people another avenue to learn and understand more. And this is for the soul. So it's going to be a good perspective shift for a lot of people, and or just speaking to things that people have experienced, right? I'm excited. Thank you for having me.
Of course, and I'm equally excited. I don't want to get too cheesy, but pretty honored to have you. On a personal note, I feel like you're somebody I've looked up to, and every time I try to have someone here on this medium, I think about whatever topic it is that we're presenting, and what kind of qualifications, how does that pertain to them? And since today's episode is going to be on teamwork, I definitely felt, looking at seeing your past experience, knowing you, that you definitely hit the mark on that. So I'm really excited to just kind of tap in to the experience that you bring to the table.
Teamwork makes the dream work, baby.
Shoot, cliche, but 100% true, right? Teamwork. It seems to me that teamwork is an increasingly lost art in today's world. And from my, opinion, I think that there's a lot of reasons for that. But, you know, the main factors, I think, for the why that is it has to do with communication. It has to do with trust.
Interesting. I can see that. I mean, I feel like a lot of people I feel like, I mean, I'm distracted by honestly my phone, right? You think about Netflix's Black Mirror, looking at your phone. With that, when I'm scrolling, I'm not talking, I'm not communicating, I'm not calling my mom, I'm not talking to people. I'm literally kind of isolated. And this, especially in America, we have this isolation thing going on. So I agree with this.
No, that's a good point too, that you bring that up. That wasn't something that I considered. Yeah, you're right, during those moments. And then you have COVID that hit,
Woo.
and then that was like nobody was going out for a while, right?
Yes, yes. And then as soon as the world opened up, you're like, okay, how do I talk within a group of people? Like, how do I communicate? Like, I had to relearn how to assimilate within a group setting. Still,
It's like,
still learning how to. It's not something you just forget. I'm still learning how to be within a space.
yeah, it's a constant, you constantly do it. It's that repetition, and it can be scary. And so it's sort of being open to new experiences, having that mindset too, that lets you kind of just jump in, right?
Yeah.
And speaking of jumping in, we're going to be jumping into a few different topics today. We're going to be discussing teamwork and the dynamics, some of the benefits of teamwork, and how those benefits can affect different elements of your life in terms of social dimensions. That examples are like family, work, school, community, things like that, society. Then we're going to pivot. We'll talk about good teamwork and how it leaves a positive uh, relational history with others when it's done right. And then we'll just kind of tie it into the meat of the podcast, which we like to talk about how each health topic affects us physically, psychologically, and then spiritually.
It's funny. I say teamwork makes the dream work. I say that to different people all the time, whether I'm doing a workout, CrossFit workout, and it's team based, or with coworkers and we're trying to work on a project. Like, it's kind of like that hoorah, yo, let's work together and make it happen. So it definitely makes, I think teamwork makes more dire situations a little bit more fun.
Yeah, it does make it challenging situations, it lightens the burden, right?
Yes.
So when it comes to the first topic, teamwork dynamics, I think it's important that we talk about what what are the core functions of teamwork, and how do you even define what a team is versus a group of people? And I think separating those two things is important when it comes to improving teamwork and just understanding.
Well, you think about back in the day when you're younger and you have like you're in class and remember the teacher would be like, okay, we have Eric, Lewis, and Ashley. You guys are a team, and we have these different teams in the class. Everybody, come up with your names. I think the first thing that happens to perception of self is to then give that team a name, which then removes yourself from being that individual, and now it creates this group energy, group setting Like
Yeah.
we are the Rough Riders, right? That's just like a popular kid group
Yeah.
name, the Rough Riders. You know what I mean? So I think that's it changes that dynamic of it being from individual to a collective energy and group.
Absolutely, because that's actually one of the core functions of what it takes to be a team is you got to perceive yourself as a team. When you say that, yeah, giving a name, removing, one person and creating sort of a general unity and or outlook that's inclusive of everybody. Yeah, that's pivotal. So I like that. Yeah, like having a team name, like the Rough Riders. Yeah, or whatever. That's an element, and then the other elements include interacting with each of the team members on a regular basis, having a clear understanding of why you guys are a team, what are your goals, what are your objectives, things that help kind of the whole teamwork cohesiveness work well is having a diverse range of how-to talents. The more diversity you have, obviously the more problems that you can solve. And then some of the elements that take work, especially with like new groups, people who aren't around each other a lot, you have to have a high degree of respect and trust, not only like on an individual level, but when it comes to a team, not everybody's doing the same effort at the same time, and some accomplishments or contributions may not hit the highlight reel, but respecting everybody in the group for their contributions is pretty important.
No, I agree with that 100%. And the reason I said 100% is because we collectively, as a unity, as a group that has a as an outlook, everybody's contributing a certain percentage to reach that 100%, whatever that goal is. And sometimes I think individuals, you carry different weights, and that's where the teamwork comes in. And it's truly, I think it creates a strong core where where I'm an expertise in. Let's say, for example, I'm in a group setting. I might just come in and whatever this topic is today, I might have 20% because I'm not an expert in it. But I'm going to contribute where I can.
Yeah.
Whereas Ashley is coming in with, maybe 80%. And this is where she carries the load. And then she's an expertise in, for example, operations, and I'm sales, and
Yeah.
we're doing an operations meeting. So definitely like reaching to that 100%, making sure that people understand what you have to give, where your limitations are, what you're really good at. As long as we have the cohesion there, then I think that's huge core point.
Yeah, absolutely. Core function there. The last thing is that we definitely have to have an effective recognition and reward system. And so, whatever that is, like workplace, you get paid, right? So, that's a reward, right?
Yes, yes, getting the pay definitely if it's a group project, and then if somebody goes above and beyond, we do have certain people that within a group setting that do the extra things, that do the little things. Sometimes as it's happening, it's not recognized, but at the end of the long journey, it's important to recognize that that Derek, he did a little bit more, and maybe we got to
Yeah.
make sure that Derek gets that love and respect for going above and beyond to get a certain project done.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's an important element there. And kind of going into a little bit more of the mental aspect of what teamwork is, it's important that there's role clarity and people understand what their roles are. I think that's huge. And speaking of, roles, it's important that one of those roles include some type of leadership.
Leadership is important. Man, when you think about any business model, any government, any political model, just society in general, we always look to an individual or a collection of individuals that have leadership, that lead and kind of, not I want to say make the rules, but make sure that there's clarity amongst people and what they're supposed to do.
Yeah,
Everybody can't be a leader. Sometimes you have to be able to follow. Some of the greatest leaders in the world have to be followers and learn how to lead too. So I think
exactly.
strong leadership is without strong leadership, without the the head of the snake, if the head of the snake isn't operating, then how do
Yeah.
we eat, right? So
For some reason, when it comes to like what you were saying with, you have to be able to follow to be a good leader. I think of Game of Thrones with the whole Jon Snow being talked to by his commander. He was grooming him to be the leader or whatever up
yes,
there. And he's like, well, if you, but he kept not listening, right? So, and he
yes,
so he pulled him aside and he said, if you really want to lead, you're going to have to learn how to follow. And those like iconic words for some reason stuck with me. And then when you brought that up, it's like I get the flashback of that scene there. So yeah, that's absolutely right. So for those interested in the leadership portion of teamwork, I think it's important to understand that you have to be a good follower as well, because to be a leader, you have to understand the role of the followers as well. And maybe I don't even want to use the word follower too much, because it really is more of a cohesion type of thing. Another thing that's important for teams to have in terms of the mental aspect is a clear information exchange protocols, whatever that is, whatever medium they use, things like that.
That comes out to that communication from your, like you said earlier, communication's got to be key. So, within that group setting, maybe the leadership creating that precedent of communication, and that's where you have that strong cohesion too.
Yeah, and with that cohesion, that enables the team to grow, to face up to challenges, to tackle problems, find solutions, plan work times, and deliver the results. It creates all these different things you can get done. Whereas if you're an individual, it would be too much work and you'd have to be trying to fulfill all these roles, which is really tough to do.
And very just inefficient. I just, think about some of the entrepreneurs in the world, and they might, the Zuckerbergs, let's just look at an extreme example,
Mhm.
individuals like that, to where they are hiring or they have people in their circle that are smarter than them in a specific topic. They aren't trying to do everything. I think we've all been in a position at one point in our life where we're like, all right, how do I do this thing? Or if I want to, for example, I've been a photographer before, a wedding photographer, and when you're the only shooter and you have to shoot everything, that's going to be a tough day. You're talking about the getting ready, the wedding itself, the portraits, the family, the reception, the engagement. There's so many different elements to a wedding, a traditional American wedding, but any wedding, honestly, just there's so many different cultural different things to where, like, how do you capture all of that? You get a team, right? You get a videographer, you get a second shooter, you get different people in places, a sound person, depending on the wedding, and then you all come together and you create this brilliant art medium for a beautiful couple. But if you're by yourself, and I've shot a wedding by myself, definitely not as fun and definitely a lot more work.
Got you. Yeah. Oh man. Well, kudos to you for getting through those moments. And yeah, that's a beautiful example. I feel that it exemplifies the importance and the benefits of teamwork, because the work kind of all plays in together, and ultimately it's not as stressful, like you said, if shooting a wedding by yourself or with a team, right? Which
Yes.
is more draining and takes more out of you. Definitely those solo times, for sure. So when it comes to having a team and that's lightening up the weight, it's important to have to be able to grow and do those different things to like kind of progress as a group in terms of how you guys do your work. There's several models out there for kind of what it takes to be able to do that. I stole one that was well researched called the Tuckman's model. And basically, it proposes that there are 5 different stages that groups go through that enable for them to be able to grow, face up to challenges, tackle problems, find solutions, and then plan and deliver the results. So the first stage, that's forming. That's when the team comes together. That's when the team name gets, hopefully that would be a good time to come up with the team name. And then identifying, the goals, all those things we were talking about as far as role clarity.
Yeah. This
Yeah.
is where, like, hey, I'm David. I'm good at sales. Hi,
Yep.
I'm Sarah. I'm good at marketing. And,
Yep.
people say, hey, where you're good at, what your name is. And now we're
Yep.
starting to get to know each other.
100%. Exactly. During this time, this is that time we were talking about where you kind of got to just jump in and every day jump in. Yeah, you may feel anxious, you may feel nervous. Those are feelings that are associated when you're not sure of an outcome, and that's right. You're not sure of an outcome, but that can often be a beautiful thing to that outcome. So push through that. If you guys listening are experiencing that, it's worth it. I promise. The next stage is storming. This is where they could be potential disagreements. You have people who they have their expertise, they have their particular area of knowledge, and how they feel that applies to a situation may be in direct conflict with somebody else who is at a different criteria or area of expertise, and how they think it should be handled, depending on what the problem is. And so it's the storming stage.
Ooh, ooh. I'm sure we've all experienced this where you know, a lot of times our teamwork is within a working environment, right? Our coworkers, and there's moments of frustration to where you feel like I can speak from experience where I feel like I was, at one point giving so much, and I'm like, yo, why isn't this person contributing? And I'm just getting frustrated, and I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to continue to work. As I read through the Tuckman model, this is where ideally you have, there's gonna be some type of confrontation, and then you're like, okay, hey, I've been doing this and I feel like this is unfair, right? Maybe open up some dialogue, communication. Hopefully, ideally,
Yeah.
let that storm just brew and brew and brew. We don't want a hurricane
Mm-mm.
level 5 out here. We
Yeah.
want to, have it rain a little bit, and then okay,
Yep.
let's talk about this.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, let's not have the interpersonal communication skills break down now. Let's
Oh,
keep that intact through this process. But certainly, yeah. So that's the storming. I feel like we did a good job talking about that. So moving on, we have norming. This is when the group kind of gets a sense of its pace, its identity, what after all that storming, you got to know Sarah over there and what she doesn't like or what isn't a favorable situation to her. So you kind of know that, hey, I might want to dial back here. Whereas before our storming phase, I would jump in and try to solve a problem this way. So sort of that's sort of what establishes the guidelines. So, and then when you guys face a problem, there's becomes like a normal way to take care of it with as a team versus how you would have individually or if you were part of a different team. Yeah, that's where the norming phase kind of starts to set in.
I feel like that translates so well to the next one. I know we're still talking about norming, but
Yeah.
now, like you said, we kind of know, we have a better understanding of how our roles play a big part. And going into the next topic where you talk about performing, now we can be constructive on what we can do as individuals, how we collectively come together and start crossing off the objects on the list, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Like that's what the performing part is, where that team is now working effectively. Everybody does understand what they're bringing to the table, and now we're it's kind of like focusing a light, if you will, in terms of the objective and solving that problem or problems.
Yes. You hit goals, you hit percent of goals, wherever you got to reflect on it, make adjustments, make changes, or you might be on a different team after that. Who knows? But you kind of live in that conclusion of what you were able to achieve.
Yeah, for sure. And it's memories, and then whatever you achieve, I'm sure has some kind of impact and was worthwhile. So that you get to reap the benefits of that. The last stage, it does say adjourning, and I think that our listeners can kind of understand already just by the word adjourning. So the group, disbands potentially, and that's something that can or may not happen depending on what it is, like and what kind of team.
Do you feel like within journeying, like I'll pose a question to you. In a lot of instances in life, teamwork is going to involve you working with someone you might not like, you might not get along with, or they might not like you, right? That's
Yeah,
just in this world, there's so many people, you're not going to love everybody that you come across, right? And
100%.
that's okay. Respect is an important part of that too. Be
Yeah.
able to respect someone, not just always like them. But I feel like in the journey, that's the opportunity to be like, okay, cool. Me and Brian and team got this project done. We
Yeah.
did the best we can do as a team, but I would not want to work with Brian anymore because I know how he works.
Yeah.
We made it work this time, but I just know we were not a good team together.
Just to clarify, if at the adjourning phase, would that be an appropriate time?
Yes.
But I think at the end, during the adjourning, or even if you guys aren't adjourning and you guys finish something, there's got to be a period of where you guys can give that feedback and how that whole thing was. And I think that's important. And then also, I think there's a bit of a stigma of not liking someone for whatever those reasons are. that's just the way you feel. I think that there's a certain level of normalizing that between you and that other person. Where he's like, you know what, honestly, I just don't like you, and I don't like you either, or whatever. And you know what, hey, but I'm gonna treat you with respect and blah blah blah. And depending on how the past history, because sometimes there's that past history. If that past history involved a lot of other people, I encourage being calm and normal about, everyone knows we don't like each other. It doesn't have to have that type of intensity. And I think, but at the same time, you're not lying about how you feel. And I think, honestly, I've seen a lot of friendships get formed that way. And then they're one of the strongest friendships ever. Like, it's crazy, personally. But if it doesn't get there, that's okay.
No, man, how no, you see that all the time where these two people aren't getting along.
Yep.
They finally sit down and talk, and they find out they're just so alike. That's why they don't get along, right?
Yeah.
You're an alpha in this thing, and you're in a group setting with an alpha that's in the same, like they're in the same energy.
Yep.
You're matching it, but you're like, whoa, like I can't have somebody being like me. Like, yo, I don't like that.
Right.
I don't Brian, yo, like, and then yo, Brian, like, yo, man, what's going on, man? Like, I feel like, I'm not getting the vibe you like me, this and that. Well, I don't like when you do it. You have a communication, you have a conversation, and you're like, oh, yo, Brian's actually pretty cool. Like, that's my guy. I like working with him.
My dad always likes to say, opposites attract, like repels. So that can sometimes be the crux of it, what it is. And, to add to that, on the other flip side, there's people where I've come to that place and we are totally opposite. Like, even through it all. But you know what? When I come to a situation with them, I say, I know I'm going to go left. So you're probably going to go right, or you're a total different approach. So let's see what those are. It kind of creates options more in a way when you guys, and instead of doubting the intention behind it, whereas that would usually kind of creates that conflict, you can trust that you guys have that respect. You've built that trust. You've been honest about not liking each other. And now, yeah, I know you're going that way, but you have your reasons for it. And
Mm.
you know, I'm going this way because I have my reasons for it. And that's when you can kind of negotiate. Next thing we wanted to go over was the actions of successful teams, and like what are some of the things they're doing that you can see, no matter what team you look at, that's the element of why they're successful.
I think one key thing is if you are at odds with someone and this is the storming phase, I think it's clarity should be made in the fact that it's not you versus me or me versus group. It's
Yeah.
group or you and I versus problem. The problem has to be this third party external thing every time within that situation. Otherwise, our egos, our communication is going to be lacking. We're not looking at the problem as this other thing that we're trying to come together and solve. We're looking at the problem as each other, like Brian's my problem
Mm,
versus what we're trying to do is the problem.
yeah. That's, what, I never thought about that way. And so I'm really glad for you mentioning that, because I definitely won't forget that. So that's an important lesson. Yeah, you got to take that spotlight off the ego. And me personally, I've often wondered, how we can do that, or how I can do that if I'm ever in a teamwork situation. And I feel like you putting it that way is so was eloquent, and it's the way a way you can easily take that spotlight out and focus in on the problem versus other people in the team. Yeah. When it comes to doing that in those conflict moments, I think one of the actions of a successful team is that they practice deep listening, and they
Mhm.
recognize that collective ownership of the problem, like what you were saying, to drive the team forward.
Exactly. Not people versus people, but people versus problem coming together. And I feel like that builds up over, one of these other action successful teams on this list is having regular meetings. You know, communication is key. And if you aren't having enough meetings, if you're not having regular conversation or a cadence of
Hmm.
sharing information, sharing updates, then I'll never know where Brian or Ashley is on this project and where I'm supposed to contribute if, if marketing isn't if marketing doesn't have their project done, then I can't present a sales to a client, right? I need to be able to have that marketing to back it up.
Yeah.
So that's where those regular meetings play a big part.
Yeah, absolutely. Regular meetings, that's something you can see in every successful team. Speaking a little bit back to what we were talking about earlier, respectful engagement of disagreements. That's in every
Mm.
successful team too. And that's kind of where we were talking about that storming phase and how it's important that we don't let those interpersonal communication skills go out the window in those intense times, because I'm sure that the temptation can at least be there for us at times.
Oh my goodness. Sometimes you just want to be like, yo, you suck. Like, you know what I mean? Sometimes you just want to say that to someone and like, like hoping that, yo, this is gonna be their come to Jesus moment. I'm gonna tell them they suck. And all of a sudden they're gonna shift and change and become the best person ever. No, that is not. Somebody came to you and was like, yo, David, yo, you suck. I'm like, yo, bro, like, no, yeah, okay, yeah, no, you suck, and then it becomes an argument match,
Exactly.
right? So you got to be able to respectfully engage and not find yourself getting upset or angry within a team setting. Communication. I mean, this is, like relationship. This is
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And another thing about when it comes to being considerate of the other person when it comes to your approach, I think in successful teams, one action that they do is the ideas of everybody, it contributes to an arsenal of different options to solve a problem. So with considering your approach, you're also considering others' ideas.
that Kevin. That's a very important part. I'm glad you touched on that because how many times have someone, including our listeners, you've been in a group setting, you have an idea, but you're reserved on giving it. It can be a great idea, it can be a terrible idea, but this needs to be a setting to where people can share any type of idea and we have to give feedback like, hey, David, that's a great idea. We appreciate you giving it, but this is why we feel like maybe parts of that don't work. But it needs to be an important setting where ideas, you can present them. You don't have to be shy about them. You don't have to feel like you're going to antagonize by your idea. You need to be able to share it and feel good about what the group can discuss on it.
Super important that people in a group feel comfortable presenting the idea, good or bad. And I think that the work there, that when that's not the element, then that's definitely an area of improvement that the team could use right there,
Mm-hmm.
because there is a lot of unique ways some of these problems can be solved that are easier, less effort, and generate a bigger impact. And all we got to do is make sure that this person's voice is heard. You know what I mean? The last one, team members need to feel comfortable also asking questions, especially when it comes to like assumptions. So, like when people are saying, hey, this is the problem, we're going to do this, blah, blah, blah. If there's assumptions, people need to feel comfortable questioning those.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, okay, why this way? Let me ask that question to the group. Like, hey, why are we doing it this way?
Hmm.
And I want to make sure that everybody understands why things are happening. We're not just assuming it's the best way. We're just like, hey, XYZ plus ABC equals EGF. We're all on this, we all understand that. Okay, perfect. Okay, Brittany has a different idea. She doesn't think it's, she's like, oh, wait. I better, maybe this doesn't work this way. Maybe it's better this way. And we all kind of sit back and we're like, okay, let's give it a thought. And then we're like, oh, you know what? Actually, Brittany, you're right. Like that's actually a better way to do it. Let's not assume and let's be able to discuss it. So
Exactly. I think that some people can react defensively at times, to
yeah,
this sort of line of questioning because it's seen as a challenge. And it's important that everybody on the team be able to take a step back and try to not look at it in that manner, because then it could cause conflict, it can disrupt cohesion, and then two, it takes away from the problem, focusing on the problem. Those are the actions that you'll see in every successful team that you look into.
Kevin, I'm curious
Yeah.
if these teams, these individuals contribute in the best way possible and you have great teamwork, what kind of impact can you get from that?
I will start off by saying some of the abstracts, and then we're going to get into the specifics. So sometimes the impact, the positive impact, there's no way you could have known until it's over, because just the way things line up, there's just benefits, like maybe you met a new lifelong friend, or you went through an experience that changed who you are. There's no way you can anticipate that. So those are some of the like bonus, or like whoa, like cool things that can happen when teamwork is going well. But generally, some of the general benefits, one is problem solving. You can get things done that you just simply can't get done by yourself. So that's one benefit and impact of teamwork.
That makes sense. I mean, that's part of the reason teams exist. It's what you can do as a team versus you can do alone.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And you were saying earlier about things being inefficient when trying to shoulder it all yourself versus with a team. So your efficiency, it goes up a lot. So that's definitely a benefit of teamwork. It actually feels easier. You
Oh my,
get more done.
I'll give an example from when I shot weddings. You have a time where the groom and his party are getting ready, and the bride and the bridesmaids are getting ready,
Yeah.
maybe at the same time,
Yeah.
because there is a wedding ceremony that's happening. You're just there to capture it as it's happening. And
Yeah.
sometimes you stage shots, sometimes you create time frames for certain particular way to capture it. But at the end of the day, for me, I wanted to document it as it was happening. So if I'm with the grooms and I'm taking pictures of them getting ready, them hanging out, them just having this once in a lifetime moment where they're celebrating this love and friendship, I ideally would want a second shooter also shooting the bride and the bridesmaids. Where if it was just me, then I'm having to go back and forth or be like, hey, guys, don't get ready till this time. I'm having the girls get ready here. And it's just creates this imbalance, creates this kind of a weird flow to the wedding day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's less efficient because now I'm having to shoot two different events at two different times. Whereas if there's two, we're both capturing it and we can both continue to move on in the timeline of the day.
Yeah. And to kind of segue onto that, the goal of capturing the wedding is to create a beautiful set of memories that the bride and the groom and their family and loved ones can look back on, right? So when
Mm-hmm.
you have a team versus by yourself, well, by yourself, sure, yeah, that's definitely a lot more to do, and you may accomplish that. You may still accomplish that despite those challenges, but the likelihood of you accomplishing it goes down a lot, versus if you have a team. Well, your likelihood of capturing those memories in a way that the bride and groom will look back and feel that, wow, that was just some great moments, that goes up when you have a team.
Yes. I mean, if it's just on you and people are successful and they fail every day, I'm not successful every single day. There's some days I fail, but I still try because failure is part of just that growth. But I'm less likely to fail if it's just not all on me.
Yeah. Exactly. You're right. The other parts are still operating, and so it can kind of help cover for that moment. And that's not something you get in an individual type of soloist setting. So yeah, I think that's a good point. Through that communication that you get being a part of a team, you're going to have more information personally as an individual to work with, versus if you weren't communicating with other people because of their different perspectives and experience and whatnot.
When I think about my professional career, working in consumer products, Red Bull at one point, working with different members who are expertise, I am an expert in sales. Right now, that's what I do. But through my different moments in my career, whether working on a team or project or working for a startup organization, I understand basically how marketing works. I understand basically how operations and customer service works. I understand why there's synergy between them. I'm not an expert in those other departments. I don't need to be because, I work as a team,
Mm-hmm.
but through working with them and through learning through them, communicating, seeing what their problems are and helping them solve their problems, I now understand how those other departments work, which now as a professional, I am a more experienced, more savvy, a better sales rep, understanding how my coworkers and team works around me.
When you have more knowledge and you're constantly going through all the things we talked about, from the communication, from the conflict resolution, you start to pick up new skills. Each person gets a chance to develop new skills that they didn't have prior to joining the team, which could have, again, some of those abstract, we don't know, but from little benefits in your life to huge benefits, right?
Huge benefits. Seeing yourself maybe being in a position of leadership, right? How do you something I aspire for my professional career is a position of leadership to where I can help others achieve their personal goals or professional goals, and learning how to work within a team, so I know how team dynamics work, and knowing how to follow a leader, so that when the opportunity comes for me to lead, that I'm the best version of what that could be for the next person. So you're right on with that.
Yes, definitely. And with that, with those new skills and things like that, and just the mental exercise of constantly, because this is a lot of mental exercise, a lot of people, it's easy to think about the benefits of the physical exercise and doing the reps, and that increasing your muscle size, your strength, and yada yada, right? But not a lot of people consider how your brain works a lot like a muscle, and when you're exercising it a lot, it's going to become better. It's going to your cognitive abilities are going to increase through. That's a benefit of teamwork.
Every experience, every moment, we just continue to build. We're like the Matrix. We're literally like we're organic machines that can absorb and learn and contribute. That's how I look at it. The
Hmm.
more I do it, the better I get at it. We
Yeah,
all can.
that's true. Also, our emotional intelligence, or our ability to have empathy, that improves. That's a benefit of teamwork. You being able to see and even put yourself in someone else's shoes is an important skill, and definitely something that will impact your life outside of that team for sure. So some of the things that or social dimensions that we mentioned we were going to talk about in terms of the team setting. So with family, the benefit of you guys working as a team, if you're living in a house like you're a high school student, you got your siblings and you got your parents working. Well, that's a team because you guys are all right there and you guys are making a living. And yeah, it's just like a lot of teamwork elements. So you're going to have improved relationships with family, and then everyone's going to be cared for and problems will just be solved with ease. So that's one social dimension, that one benefit in terms of the family aspect of teamwork.
No, I'm glad you said it, because I've kind of been focused on work and maybe even some between work and weddings and stuff like that. But a family unit, that is a team. I'm single myself, so I don't have much in terms of experience within that a unit of a partner. But
Hmm.
when I think about family units, a husband and wife, how they contribute to each other, how they, sometimes it's 60-40, sometimes it's 70-30, sometimes it's 50-50, right?
Yeah,
There's different balances to it. And like you just mentioned, you just potential for care, problem solving, all of that goes up if there's great teamwork within that dynamic.
yeah,
We touched on work, and then we talked about it earlier, but school,
yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
think about the school projects,
yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
you got to work within a team, and that's
yeah,
the initial, right? They teach us that, like, I'm 33 now, so let's
yeah,
say 20 years ago,
yeah,
and that's your first experience where maybe somebody doesn't contribute, maybe there's somebody on the team that wants to do everything because that's just how they operate. And I think that's our first taste of teamwork and understanding there's different dynamics, and those dynamics don't exactly
yeah.
change as you get older. They just they reveal themselves in different ways.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, for me in high school, when I was part of the football and track team in ninth grade, those for me were my first, I guess, real vivid memories of being part of a team dynamic. And yeah, like you said, you're gonna have overall better experience and rewarding experience if you're able to be successful in that area of teamwork. Moving on to the last part, which is more, I guess, of a larger scope, definitely a proposition and certainly something a way I like to look at the world is like when we go out to a community, you go out to the store, right? And you're shopping, right? Obviously, we all don't want to have be in conflict or have a more difficult time to get our groceries. And I think that requires everyone to sort of be responsible in the community and have at least a identity of as a community member, and then also understanding that as being a community member, what you do impacts it, and so being considerate of that. I feel like when when the community can do that, the benefit is obviously, you have a better place, a better outside the house environment.
You know what I think about when I read this line, and as you speak into it, in terms of how we operate within society, traffic lights, in a grocery store, how we manage to walk around, respect each other. If we're standing in lines, Brian's not coming in and just skipping everybody in the self checkout. He
Hmm.
understands that we have to wait and wait his turn, and that creates a calmness. But the one thing that came to mind immediately when I'm reading this, and it says, let's say making the world a better place. I'm thinking about the civil rights movement from the '60s, and you think
Yeah.
about the community, African Americans coming together with very high level operations of communication,
Yeah.
trying to make a difference and trying to make the world a better place and more equitable place,
Yeah.
for those that weren't treated so much for long history of the United States. So civil rights movement is the first thing that comes to mind when I look at that line.
And I'm really glad that you brought that up because it's a perfect example. And also, being African American myself, a reminder of to be grateful for having even a platform like this. You know what I mean? To where we can
Yes.
we can talk about it. And so I'm glad that we're able to take a moment and relate that important piece of history to this topic. Thank you. We want to talk a little bit more about the trail that teamwork leaves behind. And teamwork, when you're participating in teamwork, it kind of leaves a trail behind you. Some of the positive things that happen as a result of the teamwork is the accomplishment of the goals, an increased sense of meaning, not only within yourself and your value, but within the context of just living.
Yeah, when your team wins, right? Let's make it a competition, right? Your team
Yeah.
to come together, do a project, or you're playing a sport, and you win. Boom, you feel good, right? That's priceless. You contributed, so your own self confidence, your contribution level, and self confidence to a winning team, you now are walking away with accomplishment, a sense of well being, a higher level of contribution, and then you've also probably developed skills too. Like if you're working with a collection of others that was successful, now your value, right? I think about free agency in sports, but now your value as a contributor to another team potentially, whether it's another organization. Um, if you were a great, if you're great within your family union, maybe
Yeah.
when you have your own family, now you're going to be
Yeah.
a great contributor. You just kind of build on that and a
Yeah.
positive.
Yeah. When it goes right, even if maybe you guys don't, for whatever reason, achieve that goal that you set, there's still a positive way to go about it. And you can still have developed positive relationships with others. And it goes a long way to build as many positive relationships as you can with others.
I got a quick side story real quick. I was working for the startup consumer brand years ago called Killcliff, and I was a sales rep, and I came into the position with a lot of internal pressure, like pressure for myself to be successful, to make impact within this role,
Yeah.
and so much so that I was creating issues for operations because I was selling so much and I was sending out so much and I was doing so much that my coworker Brandon called me. He was like, "Listen, man, like, yo, what are you doing? Like, what do you like? Can you relax?" I'm like, "No, man, I gotta win."
Yeah.
Right. And he felt my desire to be successful. And instead of him being upset at the extra workload I was putting on him, he was like, okay, I can handle this. And he upped his effort. And as a result of us being successful and adjusting to each other, figuring out how we like to work, even though we don't work together anymore, and our
Yeah.
ultimate goal within that organization, we didn't see it till its end. Life
Yeah.
happens and we both had to move on. Still one of my best friends to this day because of that interaction of like kind of like we talked about in these other talking points,
Yeah.
like that open line of communication, understanding the goals, seeing where we both contribute to it.
Yeah.
And then we were both successful in our own ways from it. And I can't wait to maybe one day being co-workers with them again or working on a project.
Yeah, that's awesome and exemplifies that. It's a real thing. And it's really special because as we know in the world, we got a lot of people, a lot of things to worry about. And so the more people you could be on positive terms with, the ultimately the richer that your life will be. So that's definitely a benefit. We've talked a lot about a lot of the positive things of teamwork, and I always like to, in each topic, kind of talk about the negative sides a little bit. I
Mm,
should say in this example here, if teamwork fails or goes wrong, it's just important to be educated on some of the things that you'll see as a result. So hopefully that can serve as incentive to kind of do the effort and the communication, all those things, so that doesn't happen. But also, if it does happen, you at least have words to put to it, versus being puzzled and not understanding what's going on. So if teamwork fails, well, you could have, yeah, disrupted or damaged relationships if you had like maybe in a relationship with someone prior to being in a team setting.
ooh, I'm sure that happens a lot, especially if you have a goal, and a lot of times goals and projects have some type of date, right? We create dates to create a sense
Mhm.
of urgency and create a timeline. So we're not just going, mindlessly through something. And when teamwork isn't going well, it's really hard to hit deadlines. If somebody doesn't bring what they're supposed to the plate or to the table for their own contribution, now you lose that efficiency that we talked about earlier because that communication and contribution isn't there.
Yeah, that's true. And so that's another point there, you're spending more time, you're getting less for it. And if it goes wrong, you the time and resources you spend, you don't get back, and you
Mhm.
ultimately have less of that. If it goes wrong, it can your emotions could be heightened, and you could be we all kind of keep our composure to a certain degree, and with all the high emotions, you may crack, or you know what I mean, or something negative may happen emotionally.
Absolutely. You're not winning, right? Who wants to be a loser? Losing sucks unless you can learn from it. But you
Yeah.
lose, and now maybe this could be something that now maybe you don't trust teamwork, right? What if you're a high performing individual, you're now working within a team environment, it is unsuccessful, so now do you trust teamwork? Maybe you have to relearn teamwork again because you might not trust it. You might be the individual that in that group project that figures I'm gonna have to do all the work because last time I was on the team, nobody else did anything. I
Yeah.
was unsuccessful. And so it can go wrong, and it could change someone how they view teamwork and how they play on their next team.
Yeah, it can affect the trust in terms of teamwork, especially if you haven't had many teamwork experiences and it happens early on. It can definitely be hard to kind of like dig yourself out of that type of perspective, but it's important. The last thing that's a little separate from these things, but it's something you got to think about when you're a group, and the more similar you guys are as each of the members, the higher the risk that this can happen. It's called groupthink. Have you heard of groupthink? Kind of what that entails?
I think it's taking me back to psychology a little bit, but I'll let you give the definition.
That's the subject exactly, psychology. So basically, when when you have a not as diverse of a group, whatever kind of group it is, there's a tendency for everyone to share a similar opinion. And so what that can do is make the entire group vulnerable to some kind of bias, or even accept the acceptance of some type of assumption that things are supposed to
Mm,
work this way. So groupthink is something to think about when you're in a team, and that's something to consider at every point of the decision making process.
Yeah, like this touches on what we talked about earlier. I think it's important to create a team or a group environment where ideas can be brought to the table, assumptions won't be just mindlessly made, and so yet you help avoid that groupthink vulnerability. Because what if, what if your group is like, oh, we're done, we got this project, it looks
Yeah.
good, no one challenged it, maybe a couple of people thought but they didn't want to say anything, and then you turn
Right.
it in, it's a dud, and you're like, oh wow, what happened here?
Right, exactly. Yeah, definitely better to stop that from type of groupthink from happening early, right? So definitely something for people out there, kind of the tougher sides of reality of teamwork to consider. And at least now you guys have heard that, so you'll know what's going on and have options in terms of how to respond moving forward. So we're going to talk about how teamwork affects us physically and, when it comes to tying things in to the different elements, the physical, psychological, and the spiritual, you could pretty much tie these things into multiple categories. So you guys are going to hear things maybe in this category, and you're going to be like, oh, that could go psychological. Oh, that can go over here. And yes, you're absolutely right. So one physical thing is that when you can be a good team player, so to speak, you're going to get access to food, and that there's a whole list of things that go into that: working your job, getting the money, and then going buying the food. That's one way it can affect you physically.
It makes sense. Like societies come together, communities come together. Community is teamwork, food drives, different things like that. Like you said, gives us access to food. I don't have to go and hunt and find a chicken. You know what I mean? There's a system and teams and people in place that create a society where I can go to the grocery store. But this is the one thing I like, and this is the next one. It can create the necessary drive to get up and get moving to ensure that a goal is accomplished, which enables us to get physical exercise. For me personally, this touches into what I like to do, which is, I like to do CrossFit as a form of exercise, which is a community-based workout regimen culture type of thing.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, the trainings are miserable, tough, challenging. They create a lot of value on being uncomfortable for you to grow.
Mhm.
You don't go for the uncomfort. I go see the people and to hang out. And because I'm a part of that team and I go at that time, if I don't show up, people are like, hey, where's David? And now I get a sense of accomplishment because I get to go and see these people and hang out and maybe do a team workout.
I don't think that one of the desirable parts of teamwork is the misery and the struggle, that feeling. No one's going to try to capture that feeling. At least I
No,
haven't met one yet. I mean,
no,
okay. So yeah, I think that's a good point that you're bringing up, is to keep in mind some of the things that are worth going through that and keeping that in the forefront of the mind. And it does, yeah, and it gets you up, gets you the physical exercise. And then, teamwork, as we talked on earlier, it kind of gives you a sense of security. When you're part of a team, you guys know you can get stuff done. You have a track record of getting stuff done. You have less stress. And I think it's pretty common knowledge that if you have heightened stress hormones in your body for long periods of times, you're definitely going to have some negative health complications associated with that over time. It's the body's just not built to have stress all the time.
I think right now we're seeing an increase in mental health issues in the US and the isolation of people. Kind of we talked about earlier, we touched on when you feel like when you're in that team environment, like you said, like you're not as stressed, right? You just not much weight on my shoulder. Hey wifey, I got 30% today. I don't have a lot today communicating. And then, maybe she's got the other 70 and today we're good.
Yeah, exactly. When you're in a team dynamic, you guys look out for each other, right? And
Yeah.
so let's just say a couple of bicyclists or a team of bicyclists, right? If there's a hazard in the road, the bicyclists up front can kind of signal to the others that real quick, hey, there's a hazard here, and make them aware, and they all avoid what could have potentially, they could have all crashed into that hazard. So in essence, when it comes to safety, teamwork is going to help you be safer overall. And that's going to mean you don't have your sprained ankle, you don't have your, oh, I broke my arm today, and or worse, some of the accidents that happen out there. So I think that's one way it affects you physically for sure.
Safety issues can be addressed and avoided.
Moving on to the next one, emotional intelligence. And that's defined as the capacity to be aware of and control and express one's emotions and to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathetically.
Emotional intelligence. Yeah, like we did mention that earlier. And this is where I kind of touched on understanding, at least within a traditional work environment, understanding how the other departments work, having that empathy on the challenges others might face in the group setting, having others understand your challenges, so to make sure that all communication expectations are fair.
Hmm.
um, Emotional intelligence, I think that's one of the most important things we can continue to grow and have as human beings while we're here.
It's pivotal for, especially for like stressful circumstances. And fun fact, the area of your brain that's associated with that, that's your prefrontal cortex of the brain. And that's just, I'm a nerd like that. I like to like know what area of psychology am I looking at and where is that in this noggin here. And so I think it's cool to kind of know that's where those centers are. What are your thoughts on teamwork and critical thinking and how they're related?
Critical thinking, I feel like that's one of the topics we see that's missing oftentimes in American politics. But
Yep.
so when you're in a team environment, like I just said, when you have ideally an opportunity to empathize with others within a group setting, have perspectives of others, learn from them, have great leadership. Then it creates that space to where you can envision, you can think critically about how someone else is operating within this space. How can you contribute across all patterns of this project? If you think about it critically from top to bottom, every different avenue of the different teams and what the overall goal is. Instead of being mindless, you have that moment of just thorough thoughts on the overall cohesion of the project.
Yeah, it affects you psychologically because it helps you develop those skills. It's something you have to practice, it's not something you just start out at the gates good at. And so for people out there who are doing great things with that, if you see one of those people, or it's just important to appreciate, because it is something you develop, something worthy of that respect. And then segueing from the psychology part of things, teamwork, it affects us spiritually, and it does that in a few different ways. One is definitely a deep sense of fulfillment with accomplishing the goal, being a part of a team, hopefully winning.
Yes, yes. Or sometimes winning is not quitting when things get tough. You don't have to win the whole thing, but it's like, yo, there's so many moments where we as a team or individuals of the team wanted to just stop and give up, and they didn't, and you saw it through to the end, miserable or not, and then you
Yeah.
get that fulfillment there too.
And then with the different types of people that you encounter in teamwork settings, it can enhance you spiritually because you'll get a sense of different cultures and values that people hold that are different from you. So just overall, increases your spirituality.
Which then connects you to the world in a good way, right? You get to work with different people, different cultures. You feel more connected because you understand why Sally and her family maybe is from another country and she might work and operate differently because of her cultures and backgrounds that you had no idea, right? You're in this classroom setting,
Yeah,
teacher puts you together, and now you get to know Sally and now you get to grow as a person.
which is huge. It helps, with your personal development. It liberates you from your ego when you're able to be a good team player. And so, it just takes you out from taking yourself so seriously, which is a good way to be in touch with yourself spiritually.
Listen, say that again. We need more of this, and I would say especially in the United States, we're definitely a more self-centered society. So to liberate your egos from that self-absorption that we all kind of have, it just can make society better.
One other way too that I feel like is a good connection is that when you have and you're part of a team, you guys are getting the results, right? Your needs are being met, you know what I mean? You got food on the table, you got your, whatever it is, whether it's a family, partner, you're accomplishing these things, right? You can actually take some time and be like, what are my hobbies? What brings me joy? What what are some things that I want to do before my time is up on this earth? Because you're having all those base needs. Think of the Maslow hierarchy of needs. You're having those base needs met.
Now you can sit and wonder, and maybe you can pursue something that gives you more fulfillment.
Yeah, exactly. You can say, hey, how you can even take a second and be like, how am I feeling spiritually right now? Am I feeling, happy, motivated, etc., or am I not? And then having a moment to do that allows you to be able to take a moment to from the outside and looking at somebody else and do that for them and see kind of where they're at. And that just feeds back into the whole loop of teamwork and improving the dynamics of it. We are here. We're at the conclusion. We made it.
I'm walking away with more knowledge from this because when you think of teamwork, it's so easy to just think of, okay, school project, sports team, maybe even other ways. But then when you break it down in this way, you're seeing family dynamics, spiritual growth, psychological growth. Like it plays a part in our society because we don't exist as individuals unless teamwork exists. Ultimately, like it's kind of a all encompassing thing. So this was an amazing talking points on, and I'm sure this is gonna. I can't wait for people to get a chance to listen to this and then absorb this and maybe help them grow their professional, personal, and family lives, especially spiritually too.
Absolutely. And I am really grateful that you took the time out of your day. It's amazing having you here and just, being able to hear your experiences and your, outlooks in terms of these different topics that we covered. I really want to just stress that I appreciate you.
Well, Kevin, I'm going to speak for me, and I'm going to speak for others who might share the same sentiment. What you're doing here, I know this is still fairly a new project. This is episode 6, correct?
Yeah.
One day you're gonna say episode 100 and something, right? And you're gonna reflect on the moment. And it's just gonna be like, wow, I can't believe I've gotten here, and I'm speaking into the existence, right? Because you're doing research on these. You think of teamwork, you just think, oh, it's okay, teamwork. But
Yeah.
you're taking that one thing, and you're like, hey, there's layers here. And if you're going to continue to do that with other topics, with other individuals, I can't wait to listen and hear more, and other audiences can are excited to learn more for the soul.
Thank you. Yeah, it is new and development, and it's going to be, I like that you're manifesting that. And so I'm going to co manifest that. I always like to try to give some thanks to different sources out there. And so I definitely want to do a shout out to the American Psychological Association, Psychology Today. Those are some areas I got information. High school on here because I learned a lot of my personal teamwork experiences through those times in teamwork. And so all my colleges, I appreciate Mesa College, City College. Thank you, family and friends. Also, you guys as listeners, I appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time to listen. And there's so much out there, unless you plan on reading through a lot of books like I did, which is definitely a way to go. You can just listen to this stuff on here and just while you're doing whatever you're doing. Thanks again, David, for being here. And hope you guys all enjoyed.
Thank you, Kevin.
Hey, you guys, I just wanted to say thank you again so much for tuning in. You can find us on Instagram under KFS_podcast or on Facebook under KFS space podcast. Thank you again, and I'm excited to continue to share good content and be on the lookout for more.